You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Season ticket holders and lifelong fans with neighborhood ties discuss Cubs news and neighborhood happenings. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 318 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
Going well, Jeremy.
This will be a abbreviated hosts-only edition as I am on assignment and I'm recording on the road, so pardon my audio quality as I have a reduced setup out of studio today. So we'll be covering the week that was. We'll cover some of the news, touch on the week that will be, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. But
for our listeners, by the way, I just want to know, because I know you're too gracious to do it, but Jeremy has taken some time out to talk to us today, even though he's had a death in the family on his wife's side, and he's been out of town. So we just appreciate you being flexible and working with us here so that we can get some Cubs coverage in.
Yeah, no problem. And we are having a good week for the Cubs. And that was we talked about it last time we podcasted. 3 games at Pittsburgh. And the fall of the Pirates in spectacular fashion continues as the Cubs, of the 6 games the Cubs played against the Cardinals, there's the 6 games that they played against the Pirates over the last week, plus they went ahead and won all 6 of those games, which was necessary, but I think a little bit unexpected based on how well the Pirates were playing early in the season.
Which means that the Cubs have clinched no worse than a .500 record against the Pirates for the season.
That is correct. And this was great news, great momentum as the Cubs headed to London to play the St. Louis Cardinals. I was on the Transatlantic podcast to help preview the Cubs-Cardinals series. They had myself on representing the Cubs and talking about the Cubs. They had a Cardinals representative on to talk about to preview the series from the Cardinals' perspective. And just want to let you know, my episode did significantly better. So a lot more people listening for the Cubs' perspective. So shouldn't be a surprise, but definitely great to hear.
It is not.
So the Cubs, white hot going into the London series, and let's talk a little bit about that first. I thought the stadium looked great. The new configuration of the ballpark looked a lot better. The field was a little wacky. They had to put down turf as they were playing in the stadium where West Ham plays, and they ended up they removed all of the grass out of there, and they had a clean slate to start with, and they built out some new wacky field turf, which MLB doesn't have standards like the NFL does for you have to do turf this way. So that was something to watch for during these games. Didn't really play into a lot of plays too badly. Didn't lead to any injuries, which is what you hope for. You hope you don't see injuries there. So that was good to see. And the aesthetics of a full ballpark with a lot of fans for 2 straight games, that was upwards of 50,000 here. So definitely.
Well, especially after coming from Pittsburgh, it was an interesting contrast. And the games were at an interesting time. I mean, I kind of prefer the noon game to the 9 a.m. game. That was a little bit early for me, but getting the game over with before any other game in baseball starts was an interesting concept. That happened 2 days in a row. That takes the pressure off, especially after you win.
Yeah, I was used to the, I was used to the Sunday morning, Saturday morning watching Premier League soccer. I'm used to like having coffee and watching sports. So this was it was nice to have coffee and watch the Cubs Cardinals in the morning, and then yeah, you're right. Having the whole day is pretty delightful after that.
It sure is. I do have to say, uh, after the Pirates series and the momentum the Cubs built, and then the first game against the Cardinals when the Cubs clobbered them, I thought after the first inning of the second game that my bold 5-0 prediction was about to come true. Sadly, that didn't happen for the Cubs, but you got to say, I mean, not only did the Cubs score the outscore the Cardinals 13-1 to start the London series, but even the loss, these things do happen. The loss on Sunday, I think, was explainable for a number of reasons. But before we get into like the ugly part of that loss, how about back-to-back shutout wins for the Cubs at Pittsburgh? I don't care who you're playing. If you can shut out a team back-to-back, that doesn't happen very often. I'm trying to remember the last time the Cubs actually shut out a team in back-to-back games.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
exactly. You really wanted to see the bullpen do what they did. You really like to see the different starters have success. You saw Drew
Yeah.
Smiley have success. Uh, you this wasn't Steele and Stroman here. This was uh, this was Stroman continuing to be hot. We'll get to the Sunday game here, but you had Stroman and Smiley going back to back here and shutting out the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the winning, I call it a winning streak, but if you look at this winning 9 out of 10, Tayon pitched well, Smiley pitched well, Stroman pitched very well, Hendricks pitched very well, Steele pitched well, Tayon got roughed up a little bit, but then Smiley pitched extraordinarily well, Stroman very, very well, Hendricks well, and then Steele very well. You start to build a rhythm here, and you look at your starting 5 pitchers, and you're like, huh, this could be good if they could keep up, a strong rotation. And you've got people coming out of the bullpen now, like our friend who I thought we might lose about a month ago, but our friend Brad Fulmer is now pitching quite well for as or I'm sorry, Michael Fulmer, Brad Fulmer, wrong era. Michael Fulmer is pitching
Yes.
very well with the Cubs after that horrendous start in April. He's really settled down, and he's only given up, I think, 1 run in like the last month or something. So, to see him and Alzolay and Merriweather and Leiter, you start to say the bones of a bullpen are starting to come together. Anthony Kay. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you can expect from some of these guys moving forward, but certainly in this last stretch of games, they've all pitched well and helped contribute to the Cubs' success. And unfortunately, Sunday was just one of those days between Stroman getting a blister on his finger and some of the poor defensive play. I don't know why, Jeremy, you insisted that Mancini play for space on Sunday, but it was kind of ugly.
Yeah, that is, man. It's tough to watch, especially today. It's on Monday we're recording this. 11 years ago today, Anthony Rizzo made his Cubs debut as
I was there.
A mainstay at first base for the Cubs, and someone we definitely miss when we see the Trey Mancini experience at first.
And I had high hopes for Mancini this year. I've seen Mancini a lot out in Baltimore. He's somebody who, although he had a kind of a slow second half to last season, started off really hot last year. Somebody who I thought would add some stability to the Cubs lineup. I can't complain about the signing from that standpoint. It seemed to make sense at the time, but the sharp decline in his abilities is really concerning. I mean, I thought at worst he'd be a league average hitter. He's always been league average or above. He's been below that, and his defensive performance has been painful. And it's just, and he signed to a 2-year deal. It's also painful. I don't know. It's been one of sort of the dark spots from this last month or so is watching. Now that he's got over 200 plate appearances, you can't even say, well, it's just he's not getting enough at bats. He's getting the at bats. He's just not doing much with them. And again, between Hosmer and Mervis and Mancini, first base has been a real sore spot for the Cubs. And you just wonder how many games they might have won this year if they'd had just even an average first baseman.
Yeah, it's
let
tough.
alone Freddie Freeman.
Well,
we wanted to sign,
that's what this podcast was clamoring for. It's tough to watch the struggles over there at first base for years. It's not just this season; it's been years. But this is the first season where it mattered, where it's costing you games.
And it cost him, it helped contribute to losing one game. So you can't really, in a week when you win your other 4 games, you have to consider it a win overall. But
but that's this week. I mean, we talked about one of the losses in Washington was Hosmer playing first base, and one of the we've seen a few games get away this year where those games are at a premium here. So
and I guess why it really matters is because from a talent perspective, while the Cubs are winning a lot of games right now, I still feel that they don't have the overwhelming talent advantage. I think even Hoyer has admitted, this isn't a team that will consistently drub teams, but with offensive power and overpowering pitching. It's a finesse pitching, defensive oriented team that counts on some timely hitting in order to succeed, and that's good. But it's not a team that can afford to throw away wins. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Staying on the positive, though, Ian Happ had a great game in London.
He did.
Hitting a couple of home runs, and this is a guy you want to see heat up. This will help that offense a ton if we start to see Ian Happ anchor the middle of the lineup.
I know it was kind of a head scratcher for some people when the Cubs signed him to an extension. But when you look around, I mean, just think about like a year ago or 2 years ago when people were talking about how the outfield would look in a couple of years. And, there's the Suzuki thing and Brennan Davis and, Pete Crow Armstrong and any number of other guys in the minors who are going to come up and be huge contributors in the outfield. And how could there's no room for Happ. He'll just block people from coming up. And you got to look around now and you think, thank God they've got Ian Happ for next year because, the free agent market is not that great and he's been their best hitter. And you need people like that to continue to hit well. And you can't rely on waves of young players to come up and succeed simultaneously. It happened once in Cubs history and they won a World Series. But there are all the other times in Cubs history when it didn't happen. So Ian Happ has been a steady piece there, whether he ends up being a left fielder long-term or DH or even play a little first base, who knows? But, he's patient at the plate. He's drawn a ton of walks this year. His power's been down a little bit. So having those home runs this week was kind of nice to see. But he's been doing all the other stuff that you hope for. He gets his extra base hits, drives and runs. So good for Ian Happ.
Absolutely, and good for Justin Steele in that same game. He looked sharp, taking a no-hitter into the fourth.
I was nervous about that start a little bit. I don't know about you, but with the injury that he suffered, and also playing, and those stadiums, can have some odd results. And I was worried that there might be, Cubs pitchers might get torched. I thought they'd be high-scoring games just in general, and actually they weren't as high-scoring as I thought. I don't know about you, but. He pitched wonderfully.
Yeah, since his first 2 outings after straining his forearm, 6 innings pitched, 1 run, 5 hits, 8 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. So great to have Justin Steele back in this lineup.
Yeah, if they're going to compete this year, they're going to need him there. He only walked 1 batter in his 6 innings, got 8 strikeouts, just a solid overall performance, and the kind of thing that you like to see to start a series, albeit a 2-game series.
Yeah, and looking at and Miguel Amaya, another bright spot too. Seeing him perform. That's the more we see him perform, the less I want to see the Barnhart experience anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, it feels like the Cubs have some room to improve, and those areas can still be done at first base, catcher, maybe designated hitter to an extent, depending on where Morel ends up playing, or third base even.
So many holes. Still.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if I said you need a first baseman, a third baseman, and a DH, those are three positions that typically you have your best hitters at many teams, right? So, to have those being the worst is, yeah, that's a handicap that they've self-imposed, and maybe if they keep playing well, we'll see the trade deadline. Maybe we'll be getting some additions to the team rather than subtractions, which is what I think a couple of weeks ago we were pretty more or less had relegated ourselves to thinking would be the case.
Well, yeah, that's looking at the standings as of the time of this recording, Cubs are 2 games under 500 still. They've gone 8-2 and still have not reached the 500 mark. So that just tells you
they had a long hill to climb.
Exactly. But they are the only team in the division with a positive run differential at the moment. Everyone else has fallen off a cliff when it comes to that.
Yeah, this is a bad division. We've seen the Reds won 13 in a row or whatever they won here. But you look at the Pirates, who are now 7 games under 500, and you think, well, that's bad. But keep in mind, they had 2 stretches this year where they went 1-20 total. So they're actually like 34-22 the rest of the way. They're a dominant team except for the 2 stretches where they couldn't win at all. They fall back to earth. We jinx them. Cardinals don't seem to be getting much traction. And you look at the Reds and the Brewers, and for whatever reason, the Brewers just don't scare me anymore. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a loss of Hader. Maybe it's the fact that Yelich isn't allowed to use sign stealing. But that's a team that doesn't. While they're 3 games over 500, they're ahead of the Cubs for sure. They don't seem like the type of team that is gonna. And even their fans, I think, would agree with this. Most of the fans I talk to are Brewers fans. They don't see themselves as A, being a team that's going to buy a lot at the deadline, and B, they don't see themselves as a team that's going to be able to close out the season in strong fashion, which they were quite good at back in the late teens against the Cubs, as we know. Which leaves the Reds, a young team. They got Joey Votto back too, but a very flawed team. Hunter Green their best pitcher seems to go on the disabled list every other week. And they have, I think this Ellie De La Cruz kid seems like a very exciting young player, somebody we're going to have to contend with for 4 or 5 years until we trade for him, I suppose, before he becomes a free agent. But no, it's a division that's there for the winning. How about that?
Yeah, that's the division there for the taking is not an understatement. It's not us looking at through rose-colored glasses. You could be 2 games under 500 and easily win this division still, as you're 3 games out of first place, being 2 games under 500. And first place is Cincinnati, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, is it kind of sad? Sure, it's sad, but
someone's got to win it.
It's a sadness that inures to our benefit. Let's put it that way. I mean, look, we could be in the American League Central, and it'd be even better, right? Because that division's worse than this division. If we're there, we'd be in second place, and we'd be 2 games out of first place. So,
yeah, that's it. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where the Cubs are. This is why we talk about the importance of these next few weeks, because you want to see the Cubs force the front office to be in positions of being a buyer as you get to the July 31st trade deadline. So there's still a lot of games to be played, and as we saw just a year ago, if you hit a skid at the time leading up to that, it gives the front office all the reason in the world to say, nope, we're selling instead.
Yeah, this is an important stretch. As much as it was important after that West Coast disaster to kind of right ourselves as a team, and the Cubs did that, which is to their credit. But now, as we come home, there's basically 2 weeks of baseball before the All Star break, and while only four of those games are against a divisional foe in Milwaukee, you're going to play some tougher teams. I think in Philadelphia, Cleveland, and New York. Maybe not Cleveland as much, but certainly Philadelphia, New York, Yankees. And so, what are the Cubs going to do in this next 2 weeks? Will I think dictate a lot of how we feel. Obviously, at the All Star break, they're sort of really they're kind of I think teetering on the brink still of either being contenders or pretenders. They're sort of fate has aligned in such a way that you can be 3 games under 500 and be a contender, but a team that's 3 games under 500 after a huge winning streak could easily end up 7 games under 500 in a week. So I'm not going to hold my breath yet.
Well, and one thing that'll determine the Cubs' success and the Cubs' position at that trade deadline is going to be injuries. And we've seen a rash of them here. Most recently, we saw Marcus Stroman leave the game in London with a blister, which you never like to see for a pitcher.
Hopefully that will not be a long-term issue.
No,
Hopefully he doesn't miss more than maybe a start at most.
Yeah,
because he's our best pitcher.
He's not only our best pitcher, but he's pitching he's in the Cy Young discussion currently. So he's a guy who's having a heck of a year. Like he's one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. So you definitely want to see him return healthy and have that blister addressed. And obviously, we also know he's a listener of this show, so definitely.
Yeah.
And then,
Marcus, get healthy.
Get healthy. Yeah. Cody Hoyer's injury. We're hoping. We were hoping
to see, and yeah. I mean, he's a guy who I was really counting on, as I mentioned on the podcast before, really counting on to help the Cubs down in the second half of the season out of the bullpen. Guy can throw hard. He's, when he was with the Cubs before the injury, he was a real impact player, and I was hoping that he would be somebody who they could count on in high leverage situations. I don't think the Fulmer is going to stay at the level he's played at the last month, but with Alzolay and Merriweather and Leiter, I thought, boy, they really could use another guy like in the mix there that they could. And that injury was both terrible, hard to watch. It was Dave Drafecki like he fractured his forearm throwing a baseball. I mean, it makes you wonder for his own sake and his own health. You want him to recover, but I don't know. Like, I haven't heard any prognosis on his future. Have you?
No, I was just checking.
That's a bad sign, right? Like a good sign would be, he needs to be out for 3 months, but then he'll be better. Nothing at all, and I hope he recovers and comes back and plays well for the Cubs. But you got to wonder at this point the nature of the injuries he's had the last couple of seasons. You worry that we may never. Nick Madrigal might be our sole the sole thing we can look at that trade for Craig Kimbrell as receiving, because I don't know. That's good.
In addition, more injuries. Hughes is down as well.
Yeah, and that's another tough one because I was, first of all, he's a left-handed pitcher, something the Cubs don't really thrive on collecting. But he pitched well last year as a rookie. He was one of the bright spots, actually, among the rookies last year, he and Burrell. And we had penciled him in this year as somebody you could count on, maybe as a seventh-inning guy, as a lefty, when you need one. And I really thought he and Hoyer would help round out the bullpen, and that would be, and along with the guys we've already mentioned, that would be the bullpen down the stretch. And I thought, well, it might not be the strongest bullpen in the league, but it's, you can definitely win with that pen. And it's just kind of disintegrated on us, hasn't it? With both of those guys out, those are big losses.
Yeah, and in addition too, for that Cody Hoyer injury, not only is it a fractured elbow, but he also underwent a procedure to realign his left knee as well. So, oof,
Oh,
just uh, just awful
yeah.
there. So Brandon Hughes out the rest of the season. Cody Hoyer out the rest of the season. Uh, we also saw an injury to Brennan Davis. He's also out.
Yeah. That's another one where at the beginning of last season, we're like, oh, the word was that by June he'd be the starting center fielder on the Cubs. And here we are a year later, and he's going to be out for the foreseeable future as well. And probably, and he struggled mightily when he hasn't been hurt, but he's been hurt a lot. That back injury. Now he's got a core muscle injury. That sounds great. So here we are, and we're looking at uh, you know him basically losing 2 seasons. I think fair to say, and
Yeah, just
yeah, we'll
can't
see.
stay healthy. Yeah, it's one of those you can't. I mean, he was such a highly touted guy, and it's you can't plan on these prospects being the future. You need to
A
have
lot can happen.
a lot
Yeah,
can happen.
it's like the guy 2 years ago after the trade deadline telling me that the Cubs should not go out and get a shortstop. That's the year that a lot of not this last season, but the season before when there were a lot of shortstops on the market. Said you can't do that because you don't want to block Christian Hernandez and Ed Howard. I'm like,
Get
Christian
out of here.
Hernandez and Ed Howard, those guys are like 18 years old or 17 years old. What are you talking about? I think Christian Hernandez might have been 16. He'd never taken an at bat in organized baseball before. It's like, dude, what are you doing? But it goes to that point, which is, the fragility of it all. To get to the majors at all, and then to get there and stay healthy is hard. And let's hope for the best with Pete Armstrong, who, by the way, was ranked in it was at the Pipeline midseason evaluation as the number 10 prospect in all baseball. That's exciting to see. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if he could step up and play center field for the Cubs next year because they could really use him. But you can't count on anything, so you have to come up with contingency plans. And poor Brennan Davis is an example of that.
Yeah, Brennan Davis, core muscle surgery, out 6 weeks as of.
Yeah, so that's basically until sometime in August, and realistically, the way the minor league season works, it ends early in September, and so we may not see him playing much in terms of games the rest of the year. Maybe a week or two in the minors. That's about it.
So let's look ahead to the week that will be for the Cubs. We already touched on it briefly, but they're back home, traveling back from London. They will be back for a homestand, which features 3 games: a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday set against the Phillies, and then the weekend against Cleveland. So you've got 3 against the Guardians before they finish up on the road. 4 huge games in Milwaukee, and then 3 at the Yankees before the All-Star break. So they could, uh, this is a great homestand to pile up some wins before you have
Yeah.
a tough road stretch here before the All-Star break.
We've got 6 games coming up. Now, what is the proper fan etiquette? Are we allowed to cheer for Schwarber the first time he comes up, or do we have to boo him mercilessly?
No, we cheer the person. We cheer. We like Kyle Schwarber.
I know. After the Contreras thing, I wasn't sure what we're supposed to do here
yes,
anymore.
We do.
But
that is what we do.
Yeah.
We love Kyle Schwarber. We continue to shower him with love and praise anytime he's around. We love.
I
him.
just don't want him to hit like 3 home runs in the series. He's quite capable of something like that too.
Of course, and
3 or more.
It's just like watching Wilson do the same thing to the Cubs, where it's like I hear about how he's struggling all season, and then he comes and just beats up on the Cubs each time.
Right. Well, I guess maybe if Schwarber is going to hit a solo home run, hopefully it's when the game it's like 9-0.
Yes, exactly.
And like maybe K or somebody gives it up, or maybe we've brought Nico Horner into pitch because it's like 17-0, and we're just trying to save our pitchers, whatever. But I just hope it's not in a meaningful game.
Yeah, that exactly. So Let's look ahead. We don't have any pitching matchups yet for the Cubs. We have Suarez, Nola, and Walker going for Philadelphia. We don't know who's pitching yet in what order for the
I mean,
Cubs.
I would assume if we're going in order of where we were before the London series, it's Teon's turn at this point. We'll see if they come out with them, and then Smiley and then Hendricks, I would assume. Now, they, because of the delay and because none of those guys have pitched in 6 days, they could move Hendricks up if they wanted to, or they could move Smiley up. Smiley hasn't pitched since the 19th. What's today, the 26th? So I mean, they could easily go Smiley, Hendricks, Tan if they wanted to, but Tan hasn't himself pitched since June 18th. So by tomorrow it'll be 9 days. So I don't know how they're going to play that, but those I think will be the three pitchers in some configuration.
And looking at the Phillies, they are 7-3 in their last 10, and they are 40-37 coming into this series.
Yeah, they're a little bit underwhelming this season. They had that playoff run last year after kind of an up and down season, but they do have some players there. They have, in addition to Schwarber, they've got former Cub Bryce Harper. Should have been former Cub Bryce Harper. Nick Castellanos, another former Cub. So they've got a lot of former Cubs on the team. They've got Trey Turner, Alec Baum. I mean, they got Real Muto at catcher. I mean, they've got, when you look at their lineup, they've got a. I look at our lineup in comparison. I'm like, how are we going to beat this team? Like they've got a lot of guys who. Now Bryce Harper's been in a huge slump, right? Has he? No, for him, but no, he'll be good. Castellanos is one who's hitting like .313 this year. That's quite impressive for a guy who also slugs the ball well and has an .849 on base percentage. Yeah, it'll be a real challenge to keep them down offensively.
You do
miss
Zach.
The good news.
Yeah, you miss Zach Wheeler pitching, which is nice.
That's the good news. The pitching for Philadelphia has been decent, but not like overwhelming. Even Aaron Nola's been down for him, this year. And then if it gets to a close situation where the Phillies have the lead late in the game, Craig Kimbrell can come out and try to get the save, or he might just say, "Hey, I'm at Wrigley Field. I don't know how to get saves here," and cough it up. We'll see. Could walk 3 people and hit somebody.
And the Phillies are the reminder of why it's important for the Cubs to go for the division, because the Phillies, as a wild card team last year, show you that just getting in and then getting hot in October, that's the new formula for baseball, is whoever the hottest team is in October goes to the World Series. So that's what you want to see. That's the formula. You can get hot at the right time. You can, as long as you're in the tournament, you can go deep.
They also have 3 players I look at and think, gosh, wouldn't they be nice in Cubs uniforms? The 3 we mentioned. I mean, if Schwarber was playing, maybe first base, I don't know. He could be worse than Mancini. Castellanos was the DH, and Harper was in the outfield. I think feel a lot better about the Cubs' chances. It's guys who can hit for power, especially left-handed power, like Schwarber and Harper. That's exactly what they're missing. So we'll get to watch that from the other side. And, of course, Trey Turner, who is a little bit of a down year, but, boy, he's the guy I most wanted the Cubs to get 2 years ago, I guess, the shortstop. He's just got kind of an electric ability. I guess it was last year, too, right? He was when he was in Washington, they traded him to the Dodgers, and then again when he left the Dodgers and went to Philadelphia. He's a guy who's fast and can hit. I don't know. I look at the Phillies lineup and I get really jealous, and I look at their record. I'm like, they're not that much better than the Cubs, so we'll see.
So predictions for this week is 6 games.
Yeah.
I feel a 4-2 week. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think the Cubs stand a good chance against Cleveland, given the matchups there. That assuming that Stroman comes back, which I'm not necessarily counting on. So that might be a wild card as to whether it's a Wisniewski start or somebody else. So I'm praying and say I think the Cubs will be 3-3 this week, but we'll see. But let's see if the post London hangover occurs, which I'm dreading the possibility of. And also, let's see how the Cubs can do when they're not playing the Pirates, because so many of the wins that they've acquired in the last couple of weeks have been against the Pirates, and so this will be a little bit of an upgrade in talent, and we'll see.
Yeah, and then we'll be back next week, and we're going to preview this Brewers series, and because it's going to be important, these games against Milwaukee.
We'll have to bring on one of our Brewers people to do that, I think.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to hope for next week, and we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming. So with that,
so cross your fingers that the Cubs finesse pitchers are going to be able to mystify the Philadelphia hitters in the next 3 days, and that we can clean up against Cleveland.
Make sure you're following us on Twitter at WrigleyvilleNat, same for Instagram, Facebook.com/WrigleyvilleNation. And we have a Patreon as well, Patreon.com/WrigleyvilleNation. There you can help us stay ad-free by supporting the show. If you can't support the show financially in these times, we totally understand. You can support the show by telling your Cub fan friends about the show. Help them subscribe to the podcast. And we also, if you want to consume your podcast via YouTube, we have the audio version of the podcast is up on our YouTube channel. Search Wrigleyville Nation Podcast there. You will be able to subscribe and get the audio version of the podcast. Their video version coming soon. We've done a few test shows. We've got to get Pat's camera up and running. We will be bringing you the video version of the podcast. So make sure you're subscribed there so you get notifications when that's going to be available as well. So those are all ways to support the show. All the links I described, the entire back catalog of this podcast, everything is available at the website, WrigleyvilleNation.com. And with that, we're going to call it a podcast. So, Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you again next time.